الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. In our last lesson in fiqh, we were speaking about what happens if a person omits two sajdas from two different rak'ahs in prayer. And we mentioned that this issue has two scenarios, and each scenario obviously has its own hukum, its own ruling. Now, scenario one was that the person wasn't able to go back and perform one of the two sajdas inside the prayer. Jayyid, meaning he was at a point in salat, in which fawat al-mahal had taken place. He's not able to retreat, to go back and perform one of the two sajdas that he missed. Again, we're talking about two sajdas from two different rak'ahs. The second scenario was the opposite. He is able or was able to go back and perform one of the missed sajdas. We said each scenario had its ruling, and we mentioned the ruling, so I will not repeat myself today. One of our sisters asked about salat, and specifically about missing the last sajda, or in better terms, missing one of the two last sajdas in prayer. So she asked about if a person was in the last rak'ah of his prayer and he missed one sajda due to unawareness, due to sahw. And then that person recited tashahhud and recited taslim. What should he do in that case? So I promised to answer her today. Jayyid, I believe she might not be in class, but I'll give the answer for the rest of the students, and then she can view the answer in the recording, bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She can hear the answer in the recording. I'm going to go to the board so we can explain this mas'ala. It's very simple, inshallah. We'll explain it in simple terms. Ya Rab. يوسف ممكن لازم تقرب شوي لهونيك لتقدر تشوف اللوح. All right, so the issue here, the mas'ala that we're looking at is what happens if a person misses one sajda from the last rak'ah. Obviously, we're talking here about what? About missing the sajda due to unawareness. Due to unawareness. And remembers that he or she missed the sajda after taslim. Okay? So the person did one sajda in the last rak'ah. We're assuming that the rest of his salat was done correctly. But because, due to unawareness, he went into tashahhud and taslim. After taslim, he remembered. So now what? What should he do? Here, my friends, we have three scenarios. Three scenarios. Two scenarios have the same hukum, and one has a different hukum. Okay? So let us look at the three scenarios. Whenever you're studying fiqh, it is good to break the fatwa into what? Into scenarios. So the first scenario is the person remembers that he missed the sajda before he does any of the munafiyat, or you can say any of the mubtilat. What are munafiyat or mubtilat al-salat? What does munafiyat or mubtilat al-salat mean? Ahsantum. Okay? So munafiyat or mubtilat al-salat are actions that will make the salat invalid. Inshallah, maybe one day we'll take the rulings regarding mubtilat al-salat. So scenario one is he remembers before he does any of the mubtilat. يعني مبطلات الصلاة. Before he does any of the mubtilat. Mubtilat al-salat are like changing the direction, changing your direction. You're facing qibla in salat, you have to face qibla. And as you're praying, willfully you change your direction. That invalidates the prayer. Jayyid. Eating during salat, drinking during salat. Yet someone's praying and he's eating a hamburger at the same time. It doesn't work. Like a shawarma sandwich, no, it's not going to work as well. Okay? But these things break your salat. Laughing, what we call qahqaha. Crying for a worldly reason. There are multiple mubtilat, but I'm just giving you examples right now so we know what we're talking about. So in scenario one, the person remembers that he missed the sajda after taslim, but before he does any of the mubtilat. For example, as soon as he finishes taslim, he's sitting down, he's facing qibla, he hasn't spoken to anyone, Jayyid, he remembers. Wait a second, there's one sajda that I missed. The hukum here is what? The hukum is the same hukum for scenario two. So I'll explain scenario two and then I'll tell you the hukum for both scenarios, inshallah ta'ala. Scenario two is he remembers after he does a mubtil. So he actually does something that invalidates the prayer. He remembers after he does a mubtil. However, or actually let's write provided that the mubtil only invalidates the prayer when or if done willfully. Willfully. So he remembers after he does a mubtil, provided that the mubtil only invalidates the prayer when done willfully. This is scenario two. Some might be asking, what do you mean the mubtil, provided that the mubtil only invalidates the prayer when done willfully? Well, when we go to the chapter or the subchapter of mubtilat as-salat, we realize that some of the mubtilat will make the prayer void when done willfully only. But if they're done due to sahw, due to unawareness, they don't make the salat void. Like what? Like talking. If you talk in salat willfully, for example, you're praying and then you tell your brother, grab me that box of Kleenex, willfully. Here, the word grab me that box of Kleenex will invalidate the prayer. جيد. But if you say the same word out of unawareness, you're in salat, you dozed off, and you're still obviously awake, you're awake, but you became unaware, you're in a state of sahw, and you told your brother, grab me that box of Kleenex. جيد. But you were still facing the Qibla, suppose. Here, your salat is valid because you spoke out of sahw. You spoke out of sahw. So some mubtilat will only make the prayer invalid if done willfully. Other mubtilat will make the prayer invalid when done willfully or due to unawareness. جيد. Like what? Like, for example, losing wudu. If you lose wudu, that invalidates the prayer, whether you did that willfully or due to unawareness. It invalidates the prayer. جيد. Yes, there's one case of exception that we can study later on regarding wudu, but in general, it invalidates the prayer whether you lose your wudu purposely or due to unawareness. Okay? طيب. So, if this is clear, now we come to the hukum. We said scenario 1 and scenario 2, they share the same hukum. What's the hukum? Let's see. The ruling for these scenarios is person must perform the missed sajda. When we say perform the missed sajda, we're not talking about qada. We're saying he does it in the salat. So he goes back into the prayer. He goes back into the prayer and he does the sajda. Jayyid, he does it. Now he did 2 sajdas. After the sajda, he does tashahhud and taslim again. After the sajda, he must perform tashahhud and taslim. We can put between brackets again, because we're supposing that he already did tashahhud and taslim. Is that it? We're done? No, there's one more thing he has to do. One more thing. Based on mandatory precaution, I'm going to write MP. Based on mandatory precaution, MP, he must perform sajdatay as-sahw. Al-sahw. Why should he perform sajdatay as-sahw? Because he added a taslim. We're supposing he already did tashahhud and taslim. And now we're telling him, because you're in scenario 1 or scenario 2, you have to go back into the salat, perform your sajda, do tashahhud and do taslim again, which means he has an additional taslim. Due to that, he must perform sajdatay as-sahw.
Does it matter if the sajda that he missed was the first or the second sajda of the rakah?
No, because ultimately it's going to be the second. In our case, it's going to be the second, right?
So, as an example, the person's very out of it, and he, after ruku, he sits down.
Okay.
He does astaghfirullah, and then he goes into takbir, and then he goes to the second sajda. He doesn't do the first sajda.
Okay.
Does it matter whether it's first sajda that he misses, or whether it's the second sajda that he misses.
So let me just picture this. He's in ruku', he stands up, sits down, astaghfirullah, Allahu Akbar, goes into sajda. La, doesn't matter. No, no. Okay? Yani basically, in both cases, he's going to be doing the second sajda because he missed one, right? So he's doing the second one. Sajdatay as-sahw. Yeah. Sajdatay as-sahw. Because the word initially is sajdatayn with a nun. But because there's idafa, it becomes mudaf and mudaf ilayh, the nun is removed. So you say sajdata or sajdatay as-sahw. And here the change in the alif and the ya all depend on the position of the word in the speech. So sometimes it's going to be sajdata as-sahw. Sometimes it's going to be sajdatay as-sahw. For example, فعلت قمت بسجدتي السهو. جيد. Or you say سجدتا السهو سجدتان يفعل بهما كذا وكذا. وإياكم. So one might say, what about tashahhud? Based on our example, the person is adding a tashahhud as well, right? Obviously not purposely, but because of the mistake that happened, he's adding a tashahhud. Isn't sajdatay sahw required for that additional tashahhud? We say no. For Sayyid Sani, it's not. That's why we only spoke about the salam, the additional taslim or additional salam. So this is his ruling. He must perform the sajda in the prayer, and after he performs the sajda, he does tashahhud and taslim, and then does sajdatay sahw, and he will be his prayer will be valid. Now we go to scenario 3.
If there's only one sajda that he has to perform.
I didn't get the question, sorry.
I may be wrong, but if I remember correctly, if you're in a situation, one sajda, it's recommended to perform the two.
Sajdatay sahw is always two sajdat.
It's
Always two.
Okay.
Yeah. The one that can be 2 or 1 is the mustahab sajda called sajdat al-shukr.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. وإياكم. Sajdatay sahw, they're always 2. طيب. Scenario 3. The person remembers that he missed a sajda after he does a mubtil, which invalidates the prayer at all times. When we say at all times, we mean if done willfully or accidentally. If done willfully, or instead of accidentally, let's say due to unawareness. Due to unawareness. Sahw. Now the ruling will be what? What will be the ruling? So the person remembers that he missed the sajda after he does something which invalidates the prayer, even if done due to unawareness. Like what? Like losing wudu. He finished salat, جيد. He finished the prayer, and he used the washroom, أجلكم الله, such that he lost his wudu. Okay? Then he remembered, there's one sajda in my prayer that I missed. In this case, what does he have to do? He must perform qada al-sajda. His prayer will be valid, but he must perform qada al-sajda. That's it? Yes. That's all that is wajib on him. Because his prayer is done, he can't go back into the prayer because he did this kind of mubtil, the kind of mubtil we talked about. So all he has to do is qada for the sajda. However, it would be good or better to also do something else. This is not necessary, but it's better. So I'll write it on top here. It would be better to perform sajdatay sahw. Perform sajdatay al-sahw. This is based on what? Based on recommended precaution. I'm going to write RP, not mandatory precaution. It would be better to perform sajdatay sahw. Why? Because he missed the sajda. And when you know that you missed a sajda in your prayer, it is better to perform sajdatay sahw based on recommended precaution, according to Sayyid al-Sistani damadullah. Might I find a marja that tells me, no, you have to perform sajdatay sahw? Maybe, yes, maybe. But for Sayyid al-Sistani, he says, you don't have to. You want to? Sure, you're welcome. You can do sajdatay sahw. It's better, but it's not wajib. Mm-hmm.
You have to do it before that at the time of the prayer. Or can you do it at it?
You have to do it right after the prayer. Right after, yeah.
For example, he's in the washroom, as soon as he remembers, he comes out, he does wudu again.
Ahsantum. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Inshallah, we're gonna mention the details of the qada. I was hoping to mention that today, but it seems we're out of time. Subhanallah, time flies.
Ask a quick yes or no question.
Sure.
I heard this, I'm not sure if it's true, but if you're praying, for example, and remember if you're on the third or fourth rak'ah, you could just do the tashahhud at that rak'ah and do the tashahhud after.
So you're in Dhuhr?
And there's a fourth rak'ah.
Okay. And what happens?
And let's say you can't remember if you're at the third rak'ah or the fourth rak'ah.
Yeah.
You just did your two tashahhuds and now you're saying, okay, I can't remember if it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you do your tashahhud and taslim, you're such a day of 7 because you couldn't remember.
You do, in this case, you do Salat al-Ihtiyat. Salat al-Ihtiyat is different. Yeah, we're going to study Salat al-Ihtiyat, inshallah. Yeah. Salat al-Ihtiyat is basically one rak'ah, which you do right after the prayer. Or two rak'ahs. Sometimes it's two rak'ahs, sometimes it's one rak'ah. It all depends on the case. But it has to do with the doubts that we go through when we doubt between rak'ahs in the prayer. Yeah, that's Salat al-Ihtiyat. Okay. Inshallah, we'll take its ahkam. طبعا, in certain cases, when someone doubts between the rak'ahs, his prayer is void. And in some cases, no, his prayer is fixable. He can fix it with Salat al-Ihtiyat. Yeah. But Salat al-Ihtiyat is different than Sajdatay Sahw. Sajdatay Sahw are two sajdas that are done after the Salah. Obviously, there's things that you say and things that you do. Salat al-Ihtiyat is a full rak'ah, one full rak'ah with takbirat al-ihram, or two rak'ahs. جيد. والحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على المصطفى محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل.